Welcome back to the Ultimate Road, where we are full swing on our journey to play nearly all the series represented in the upcoming Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. After a brief detour in Wario's world, we're back on track with Donkey Kong's country.
The last two games we handled in this series were pretty obscure, but we're dealing with our first legendary title, a legendary title that neither of us have really played up to any meaningful amount up to this point. It's a shame, really. I don't know how this one in particular flew under our radar for so long.
Honestly, our experiences with the Donkey Kong franchise as a whole has been shoddy at best. I started with Donkey Kong Jungle Beats as a kid, loved that game, played a bit of Donkey Kong Country Returns with my little brother, and that's it, really.
My experience is a little better. I played a healthy amount of Donkey Kong Country 2 when I was extremely little, and I had Donkey Kong 64 as a kid too, which was enjoyable for me at the time, and I spent one whole night playing and beating Donkey Kong Jungle Beats. That's about it. For the most part, the original DKC trilogy has completely passed us by. We're about to change that though. Watch us break the borders of Donkey Kong Country on the Ultimate Road.
So far with the games we've played, story hasn't been the biggest focus. And we're here to say that, yeah, we still haven't hit the story-centric games yet. Donkey Kong Country's plot is just like DK himself. Simple, and maybe even a little stupid. Mostly simple, though. One day on DK Island, King K. Rool stole all of the Kong's bananas. That's it. Go beat up a crocodile. That's all the motivation you need. You mess with the banana, you get the slammer.
Sounds about right to me. Venture across the island beating up K. Rool's kooky crusade of critters, kremlings, crushas, claptraps, and tons of other crazy competitors.
Really pulling out all the stops on that one, huh?
Eat my entire ass, you goddamn piece of shit. I will fuck you up. I will say things that will cut you like a fucking knife. I will send you to therapy, and that will make your therapist go to therapy. You will regret the moment you ever criticized my genius alliteration. You mean nothing. Your parents are fucking ashamed of you. You are fucking nothing. Nothing!
Yeah, alright. What's not a joke are the graphics in the game. Not that we have to tell you that. This game was legendary for its graphics back in the day.
Nothing! Yeah, I could agree there. The idea of using pre-rendered sprites gives SNES games such a unique look. It makes games such as this, Mario RPG, and Killer Instinct really pop.
The colors are bright and vibrant when you're not in a cave or blizzard, and the characters are easy to discern from the background.
The music has aged pretty well too. It's amazing how much quality they were able to squeeze out of the SNES. The sound font used here genuinely amazes me with how much it can sound like real instruments at times.
All the music was done by one David Wise, and a damn fine job he did with it. All the music perfectly fits the area it plays in. It's weird, I've always known about these songs from the original game, and yet hearing it in its origin game is quite amazing.
I'm not as big a fan of the ambient tracks in any game that I play, but I acknowledge it when it works well. And it does here, so I really have no complaints.
The cosmetics seem to fare pretty well, but there's only so far that they can take you. Most games tend to show their age pretty easily with the gameplay. That being said, how has DK aged?
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
I'll play it again. Show me my ass.
Definitely. Honestly speaking, I actually see us playing it again in the near future.
Yeah, it's held up remarkably well. DKC has always taken the role of a more complex platformer than Mario. A Mario for experts, if you will. You have your basic control scheme of running, jumping, picking shit up, and riding stuff, all from Mario World. Add in extra ground stomp and roll for good measure.
While the controls are pretty vanilla, it's what they decide to throw at you with them that changes stuff up. Unlike Mario, DK doesn't have the player rely on power-ups to keep themselves alive. No, it's all platforming expertise from beginning to end, with the very occasional animal buddy or barrel to attack with.
The difficulty curve in the game is something I want to talk about real quick, because difficulty balance in a game is something of an art. The game starts out at a moderate difficulty to teach you the ropes, but quickly skyrockets faster than your eye can track. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, because Donkey Kong Country was always for those Mario experts that felt the mushroomy plumber never brought enough difficulty to the table. This game asks a lot for the player, but never asks too much to the point of wanting to break your controller in half.
I would like to point out the lack of frequent save points would have been just a tad unnerving if we wouldn't have been playing on the SNES Classic where we have save states to use.
Though there is the very high possibility that we suck and that the average player of this game would have way more lives than what we were stuck with near the end.
Fair point, really.
Speaking of that, we actually played this game multiplayer for our run-through. The multiplayer in this game is interesting, to say the least.
Imagine if in Mario, when the player got a super mushroom, the other player got to control Mario. That's how it's handled. The two players take turns at the wheel, and every time a player dies or gets hit or whatever, the players swap. Considering how often you can and will get hit on a first run at least, the two players will both get a lot of screen time.
What I find admirable is that this is the perfect little sibling game.
What do you mean?
Well, imagine an older, more experienced player and a younger, less experienced player. If the experienced player is player 2, then that means the younger player can have the older one finish the harder levels for them. And it allows for the younger player to feel like they beat a really hard game if the older player sort of guides them their way through. It gives a good sense of satisfaction, since the players can swap at any given point in a level, rather than something like Mario multiplayer of its time, where the two players only swap when the level is over, or even worse, being limited to only playing as Tails in Sonic 2, where you're left behind constantly by Sonic. And not to forget Kirby's idea of multiplayer being that player 2 has no significance while player 1 is the more important character.
That's a good point. The multiplayer is extremely smart in this game, and it helps that DK and Diddy control just differently enough to make them both offer fun experiences. DK is much slower but can take out enemies that Diddy normally can't, and Diddy is much more nimble, making him more viable for tough platforming sequences where dodging enemies is the more viable option.
You know, with all this praise, we sound like we really enjoyed the game, huh?
Well, we did, but we had a few gripes, didn't we?
I mean, yeah, a couple.
I want to get those out of the way before we wrap up this review. The bosses were extremely weak for the most part. They pull a new Super Mario Bros. And just make huge versions of existing bosses with really lame attack patterns.
One of the bosses is a freaking barrel! I mean, that's pretty goddamn funny, but it's so lame!
King K. Rool is pretty fun, though.
Yeah, but only 3 hits? I thought he'd put up more of a oh, what the fuck are these credits?
Crusher? Kremling? What?
Oh, this fuck... He has a fake-out death! On the SNES! You didn't see that shit back then! Rare was living like 10 years in the future! I swear, you fucking stole my kill.
What's that? I can't hear you over the sound of all this victory.
Thief!
And with that, DK Island is saved, and King K. Rool goes to change costumes in preparation for DKC 2.
So, Thief, what's your overall thoughts?
I'd say that this game certainly deserves its spot among legends. It's got amazing sound, graphics, difficulty, multiplayer. It doesn't last a million years, and it's got barrels upon barrels of that trademark Rareware charm. You look at this game and you know that it's SNES.
I'm not really sure what else I could add to that. That just about sums it up. What a game. What a gem. Next up on the Ultimate
I'll be taking a look at a legendary title for the SNES. One that many seem to enjoy, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Did you fucking... Thanks for watching. See you next game. I'm gonna immortalize this right now. What if Donkey Kong, if he had a fucking chocolate factory? It would be Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Just, I want you to imagine DK in like a purple top hat with like it's all glittery and shit.